Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Very much living my Britney moment right now. Hi, my name is Laura Foster. I am the Head of Programme for Tech and Innovation at Tech UK. Tech UK being the UK's Technology Trade Association. So, as mentioned, today we've already explored the near-term commercial opportunities that quantum may or may not, but most likely may bring in the coming years. And we've talked about how we can distinguish hype from reality. But those who are at the pioneering edge of the quantum ecosystem are definitely the startups. And so I am really delighted to be joined here today by a fantastic panel of speakers who I'm going to let introduce themselves because they'll do a far better job at it than I can. So should we start with you, Eric?
Sure. So I'm Eric Eustace. I am a patent attorney based in New York. I've got a computer science technical background. And I have a lot of fun representing emerging growth companies and research institutions in IP strategy in the quantum space.
All right, so my name is Esperanza. I'm head of strategy and outreach at Multiverse Computing, where I explore the intersection of quantum technologies, their application to business problems and business needs, and strategy. And also regarding my outreach activities, mostly what I do is telling everyone what quantum technologies are and trying to democratize quantum.
Right, so I'm Max Sietsch. I'm the co-founder and CEO of EJIC. So my background is in quantum physics, so I got a PhD. So we started 2 years ago, and we focus on quantum photonics, true quantum light sources, networking, building large-scale networks of everything in quantum data.
Yeah, I'm Tenny Yang, and I'm a CEO and co-founder of a company called Qunasys, and we are Japan-based startup. And what we are doing is building an application for an algorithm for the chemistry applications. And we are aside from building our technology, we are also running a consortium called QPark. There's more than 50 companies, Japanese companies, attend there to learn about quantum computing and kind of use our product to see potential use cases of the quantum algorithms.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us all on the panel today. We've got a clock in front of us, which is counting right down as we speak. So let's get straight into it, shall we? And Esperanza, I think I might start with you, if that's okay.
Great.
So we all know, we're all here because the quantum ecosystem is growing so quickly at such an intense rate. And downstairs before, Minister Freeman, he was talking about how the UK is punching above its weight in tech and innovation more broadly. But startups, they often have to try and punch above their weight as well. So how have you found it? How can we enable startups to punch above their weight so they can really help drive forward this innovation?
Well, I think to answer this question, I think about the way we work at Multiverse Computing. And at Multiverse Computing, what we do is to help businesses to become the best version of themselves by the use of quantum technologies. And this means addressing business problems and creating value for them as well as for society. That is critical, is speaking business and finding the intersection with quantum. And also, as I was mentioning before, at Multiverse Computing, we believe in democratizing quantum. We believe that quantum is from everyone, and everyone can benefit from these technologies.
Brilliant. Tenin or Maxim, I wonder if you want to come in on that.
Sure. So I think there's a couple aspects there, obviously. I mean, one is how you can help startups. Well, first is don't stand in their way with complex legislation. Things like this. So I think tax incentives and so on. So I think if we're talking that we want to turn a lot of great science out there into exciting business opportunities, it has to be the kind of the ecosystem around it. And that the best thing you can do is just allow it to happen.
was wondering how many policymakers we could see in the audience there. Tenin, anything you want to add?
Yeah. So you are talking about how the government and startup can work together. Right?
I mean, not necessarily, but let's talk about that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So kind of we are in Japan. What they are promoting is like the government be a first user of the quantum technology. So kind of their government are promoting like the National Institute for them to be be a first user of this technology. And kind of the quantum technology is still a toy right now, but kind of the try that how we can leverage this technology. So kind of in that way, I think the government can also help boosting the startup ecosystem.
I love the theme of public procurement, so going a little bit off the questions that we'd already pre-prepared, but I think that's a really great topic to get into, and how public procurement can really help startups. So, Eric, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, at least in the States, there's a staggering amount of money that comes out of DARPA, the Defense Research Fund. And a lot of the labs that I work with have benefited greatly from that. It gives you first customers. It gives you access to a full suite of obscure technologies to work with. And I think that's benefited a lot of US-based universities.
So the US is obviously a really good example of public procurement there. I know it's something we're exploring in the UK. Is there any other international examples we can think of where government has come in from a public procurement perspective?
Yeah, we have very good examples in Europe. For example, in Germany and France, they have very strong public programs to benefit quantum companies, and in Spain as well.
Wonderful. Is there any exacts that you can potentially share around that? It's fine if you can't, don't worry.
No. Well, there is this concept of creating consortiums, and we can think of examples in Germany, in Spain, and as well in France. And a consortium is basically when a group of companies organize together to address a quantum computing problem or issue or thing they want to address. And an example, for example, in Spain is Cuco project, where leading companies in Spain are tackling strategic work streams related to strategic industries, for example, finance and energy. And we at Multiverse Computing, we are participating in that project.
Wonderful. So obviously the startup ecosystem, it's a very nascent ecosystem, especially around quantum. But some of the challenges that you guys are facing, because it is such a technology in its emerging stages, can be quite tough. So I wonder if you could maybe talk a little bit about some of those challenges that is particularly unique to the quantum ecosystem as a startup.
Well, I think challenges, and I don't know if these are particular to startups or to the whole ecosystem, is the level of uncertainty. And now, regarding uncertainty, I think we need a totally different paradigm to address that, a totally different playbook. For example, the excellent work by futurist Amy Webb in her article, How to Do Strategic Planning Like a Futurist in Harvard Business Review, provides a very useful framework to think in another way and to harness actually uncertainty, to harness the power of uncertainty.
I really like that. So let's stick on that theme for just a second. You were talking about the quantum playbook. I guess it could also be referred to a bit as like the quantum mindset. Maxim, can I come to you on that? Is that something that you've explored as well?
Yeah, I think it resonates really well with us, and it's something that every sort of industry has its own playbook or its own way, like unwritten rules on how they sort of evaluate opportunities, whether it's partnership, whether it's get into a project to supply something or to buy something for themselves, or like how they evaluate the benefit out of adopting something new. And the existing ones, they're not really suitable for quantum play. And you often see that people stumble somewhere along the route and they just can't get their heads around. So it feels like it should be good, but then it doesn't make sense. And that's because they play by we're playing different games there. You know, you can't play football and basketball at the same
I mean, you
field.
could try.
Yeah, you could try, but then I mean, you're gonna score goals and things like this, but it might be a little bit funny how it works.
Absolutely.
And it also comes down to like vocabulary as well. So
Okay.
you know, it's same like different way to say the same thing. You need to be able to translate it from one lingo to the other, and it's a challenge for both for all parties. Like, and you have to find a middle point somewhere.
I guess reading into that, so what you're saying is there's a lot of uncertainty, and businesses have to be prepared for uncertainty if they're going to be investing into quantum. But do you think maybe it's an idea around value almost? Like the idea of value might be a little bit different when you're investing into quantum. Eric, I can see you nodding there.
Yeah, so we saw earlier a great summary of some of the key platform technologies on the hardware side, and I think we have no idea in 15 years which of those we're going to consider competitive. And there's a long list of engineering challenges that need to be solved in each of those fields. And I think what that means is it's a wonderful opportunity for startups. You can have a very clever way of generating entangled photons that nobody else does, that nobody else has. There's a place for small companies. There's a place for emerging companies to capture key IP. We don't necessarily know which one of these platforms is going to be the key one, but they're key engineering challenges, and I think that's an immense opportunity for agile research teams.
Tenin, I'm wondering if there's anything that you want to add around.
Yeah,
this.
so I think the quantum, this industry is really unique. That there are at the same time of we are want to build industry application, but at the time we also have to work on more theoretical side. So kind of as our example, like we are doing a lot of collaboration with university. So kind of there's a lot of, to be honest, hype that quantum computing can be used maybe in the soon. But kind of the truth is that still, even if we have really powerful quantum computer, there's a lot of barrier for the algorithm side. So kind of we have to overcome to think about more clever way to use this technology. But at the same time, if we just build in the basic technology, so kind of this won't make the industry. So kind of we want to work on how can we, if this will be powerful, how can we be used for the real industrial use cases. So we are kind of, this is really unique that we are doing the two things at the same time.
Yeah, and also, I mean, building on these ideas, particularly with what Eric was saying, what I think that businesses need to address strategic reflection about what value means, and this has also about what you were saying, Laura. So what is value? That's the fundamental question.
Yeah.
And in general, and after my career in businesses, in big corporations, in general, there is this tendency to match value only with what we can measure in financial and economic terms, in a P&L for sure. But there is much more to value than that. And for example, Eric was posing a beautiful example of IP. IP is an example of value. And then there is the knowledge an organization gathered, and we cannot measure that financially, but we know there's value in that. So my takeaway here is that we need to strategically think about value and what does it mean for businesses.
I completely agree. Tenin was touching a little bit there on the hype cycle as well, which is all very much part of this value conversation. And the last panel kind of finished off talking a little bit about this quantum winter. We all hear about winter is coming, you know. And a lot of that is around setting expectations and raising awareness. I want to understand how you guys have maybe gone about that from a startup perspective. So can I go back to you to start?
Yeah, of course. Well, when we think about hype, I think it's about being very honest and being very clear. And we are seeing here magnificent talks about what quantum computing and quantum technologies can do, what they cannot do, what they are not suitable for, the timeline we are thinking about. And I think that is crucial to avoid hyping that. We have seen that also in other technological revolutions. And then I like the term of realistic optimism. We know we are facing phenomenal challenges. Some of them we don't even know how we are going to solve them. But some, like me, are optimistic and we think that we will ultimately solve them. But it will take time, and this is a long-term game.
Maxim, what does realistic optimism mean to you?
It means that you have to be really ambitious and curious, I think, about like what else is there apart from technology. Well, think about like what's digital technology is today. I mean, there's CPUs, there's things that we buy, phones and stuff like that. But what's really exciting, and this is where the real value and the real hype is like what you can do with it. And so when we say, well, applications, we quite often say it's quite grounded at this point, right? So there's a technology, there's a particular bit of hardware or a particular algorithm, but it doesn't capture the impact it's going to make longer term. And this is where you have to be like honest, but you also need to be really ambitious, because this is where lots of new things are to be discovered for our society in general and for industries. And then the analogy with how digital transformed our lives is very valid here. And you can, come up with a billion different things how we're doing differently right now. Yeah. So same applies for quantum. So you don't have to be shy of that.
Eric, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I would just say, I regularly ask, what are we competing on? Are we competing on the fundamental technology? Are we competing on the number of users? Are we competing on the user experience? And I think when you asked about realism, I think that plays into the question of how important is quantum to a given application area? Are we porting this over in a way that maybe gets us more users that looks great, or are we innovating on the technology? And I think that's always a key aspect, both of IP strategy and of business strategy.
Before we move on, just looking at the clock ticking down in front of us, does anyone have anything else they want to add on this topic? Yeah, go.
Yeah, so I think seeing the technology, that we have to first think technology in one day, it won't solve all the problem at once. It's rather we'll have really niche application and start with, and eventually will be applied more. So it's like, for example, the current classical devices, it's started with calculation of the missile's trajectory, or if you think the machine learning, it started with the image recognition, but it's really a huge application right now. So it's really wrong to mix quantum computer. Yeah, you can do a lot of things, quantum chemistry, machine learning, and optimization, but it's really totally wrong to believe that if you have some devices, we can solve all the problem at once. But I think it's rather really start with niche application, and to be honest, we are really focusing on the niche applications. And other is that we have to really be optimistic about the technology. So if it's really easy to point out list up 1,000 problems of why the quantum computer cannot work, but we and a lot of startups are working on how can we solve the problem. So that is we are doing, and the human beings with us, we are able to achieve achieving goes through the technology barriers. So really, we are really optimistic about that.
I can see you nodding. Any final comments you want to bring in on that?
Well, not much about that. I absolutely agree with what is being said. Yeah, there are phenomenal challenges. But then there's also, again, it's very much what my co-panelists are saying brilliantly. It is about keeping on despite the challenges.
Yeah, of course. It's no fun when the whole panel agrees. Okay, moving on to the next topic then. One of the key challenges that when I talk to our members, and many of them who are startups and SMEs, are talking about, it's the talent pipeline and how hard it is for startups to develop a talent pipeline when talent is so scarce anyway in this space. I wanted to ask each of you how you've gone about solving that problem, and if there even is a solution right now to it.
Sure. So I kind of sit outside of this because I'm
Yeah.
advising companies. I'm not responsible for hiring folks. But what I see in the States is there's a very clear pipeline from university to startup. And I think the climate there is very supportive of spinning out technologies from a university. A couple postdocs will almost always go along with it. You keep the PI as an advisory board member, and you're kind of off to the races. And universities with track records of high quality fundamental research, these spin-offs get VC funding, often right out of the gate. And I think that in that respect, the pipeline problem kind of solves itself for the first few years because the postdocs know the grad students. The grad students graduate and they decide, do I want to do a postdoc or do I want to go with the spin-off? And at least for the first few years, that gets kind of a high quality stable of people who know the technology.
So I guess what makes it, is it that spin-off element that makes it so unique in the US? And how can we bring that to the UK?
I think that the successful PIs are really enthusiastic in the US about fostering that entrepreneurial approach among their grad students and their postdocs. And quite frankly, I know PIs who have become extremely wealthy because of the licensing share that they get from the university from a company that their postdoc founded. And I think that there's a virtuous cycle there. Once a PI gets their toes in the water, gets a track record, they attract entrepreneurial grad students, and it builds from there.
Is it almost a cultural thing as well?
It is, and I think in my experience, there are certainly institutions that in the States that have the ivory tower attitude that you are either an academic writing good quality papers or you're in filthy industry. And I think that's very counterproductive. And I think that the folks who are successful realize that there's an interface, a really important interface that can be leveraged in both directions.
100%. We've got a lot of really great international experience on this panel. So I want to ask, maybe Tannen, have you seen any examples similar to what Eric is describing in the US?
In the US? Okay. So kind of how we develop talent.
Yes,
Yeah, inside. So kind of what we, as our company, what we are doing is kind of, it's really difficult to find people who understand quantum computing and also can do the quantum chemistry calculation. That is in Japan, we can never find people like that. But so what we are doing is kind of really hire like the PhDs. So kind of the people have really strong capability of learning themselves and people have some background for the quantum information, our quantum technology, and kind of let them work with customer, and they eventually quickly capture this. I think that is what we are doing.
Thank you.
Let me point out one little danger there. When you hire too many PhDs, and it's not what you thought, So it's kind of it's industry wide and issue. So it happened already to kind of AI community a little bit when people started spinning off like very soon, and it happens all over the place. We're a spin-off, right? So you immediately start draining talent from universities. Because you might be able to offer better pay, it's a more exciting job or something, and unless you're like really, really focused on the academic career, it's very tempting to jump the ship, and you end up with fundamental research really stalling. And if you cut that research too early and you starve it of talent, actually there's very little coming up for you later on. So that's one of the dangers, actually, the risk for quantum, and it's very real. So people just need to put more programs at universities, and everybody's talking about this. So it's not really unique to, I think, startups.
No, of course.
But for startups, it's really critical to get right people. So
yeah. I think on that as well, making sure that you're upskilling so you don't just need people with PhDs, and also looking at the business skills that will also become fundamental to startups as well. That's a whole other aspect of this, which we don't necessarily have time to explore right now, but I think it's also worth mentioning. So 3 minutes left, just over 3 minutes. I wanted to give each and every person on this panel the opportunity to make any final closing remarks that you might have. And I want to frame that around the question around what support, whether in the UK it's from the upcoming quantum strategy that we're producing, or if it's another international example. But what recommendations do you think will fundamentally help startups in the commercialization process? Can we go along the line this way? So Eric, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I mean, I think I touched on a lot of what I would want to answer here, which is easing that interface between fundamental researchers, between the university, between folks who are understanding these areas from the ground up and really have unmatched experience, and making sure that both they can get into industry cleanly, that they get the business support that they need. PhD postdoc doesn't necessarily have the business experience that they need to be a good CEO. But that's experience that you can learn. Those are things you can learn. So easing that transition, and then, to Max's point, easing the transition back. Once you've had an exit, or once you've decided that you're happier in academia, making it easy to get back to that fundamental research until the next one comes along.
Thank you, and thank you so much for joining us here today.
Of course.
Well, what I would add on this point is that what is crucial is for quantum startups is to think about quantum technologies in terms of how these technologies can contribute to businesses, how these technologies help businesses to create value, and therefore also our societies to create value. It is not technology for the sake of technology. It's technology with a purpose, and that purpose is moving our economies and societies forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we've talked quite a bit, and actually there was a lot talked today, obviously, about specifically this point. What do we do to make to grease the cogs of the economy with the quantum science and quantum technology? And I think the general approach here is don't be shy, or they will be too late.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my point is, for how to build I'd say business upon this. It's kind of what I think is crucial is to be honest. So it doesn't seem like the commercialization of this technology, but kind of I think that it will be really bottomly important in this field. So we cannot, like I said, solve all the problems at once. And this technology really takes time. So kind of the fundamental thing we have to keep in mind is that we have to to investor, to potential customers, really be really be honest about this technology, and kind of got more people really believe together and develop this technology together. I think that is most important for commercialization.
Wonderful. So thank you all for joining us here today. Hopefully that conversation was useful for the audience too. And 6 seconds to go, so we're right on time. Thank you, everyone.